We are going.
All right, guys, if you have watched our tech setups, thank you. But otherwise, welcome to Earth Echo News, EarthFest official news broadcast. I am David St. George, Communications Director of Rethink Green.
And I'm Mark Maisonneuve, the Communications Officer.
Now, due to COVID-19 this year, EarthFest is a little different. Some might even say outlandish. This year, we're presenting general information broadcast directly from Rethink Green Studios and general topics about sustainability and environmentalism. As well, we're going to mix some fun activities that you can join on to get a full experience of being out and about and socializing at a festival. Now, normally, Greater Sudbury Earth Fest would be held in the sunny downtown of Greater Sudbury Memorial Park, which would come with live music and vendors and food. Now, fortunately, with the internet, you can broadcast and listen to this wherever you like. You can order whatever food you want, listen to whatever music you want to listen to. And really what we've done here, we've just given you the freedom of choice. Freedom brought to you by Rethink Green. Now, the only thing that's missing is the information, which we've made possible in the following segments to inform you about general topics, and during this particular news broadcast, talk about some of the great things that the green groups are doing in the community. So this next 40 minutes is going to be talking about some great stuff you probably haven't heard about that all the green groups are doing. And then throughout the day, we have some great topics. Mark, do you want to talk quickly about the segments that we're going to have today?
So at 12, we're talking about food security and what does it mean. At 1 p.m., Faraz Abed, who works with Green Economy North, is going to be giving a solar energy seminar.
Actually, swap that out. Steve DeForge of Solar Associates is doing that. Yeah.
Good change.
I know. Very positive. Oh, I mean, I know Frost is tomorrow. He's doing the Energy Basics 101. That'll be tomorrow at 1. So it's easy to mix that up.
At 2 o'clock, sorry, the schedule he had given me is different than the one we have officially.
That's fine, my man. At 2 o'clock, we got Rod, and we're going to be talking about starting a movement in North Bay with Next Economy North Bay, starting an environmental business movement. And at 3 o'clock, we're going to be talking about Earth ships, stepping towards bio neutrality in building structures. Earth ships is this concept that your building in your house is built with materials from the earth and recycled materials. Is actually a really cool thing. So we'll be talking with them about that at 3. But Saturday, Mark, you start the day off with us. You're leading the day tomorrow.
I start our Saturday off with meditation. So I meditate pretty regularly. It is an important part of my life. But a lot of people think that meditation is just like one straight thing where it's just like you sit down and you clear your mind. You can do it in so many different ways. You don't even have to sit down. You could be like walking, standing, sitting, laying down. And it's just about focusing your attention towards something. Sometimes that's clearing your mind. Sometimes that's your heartbeat, an idea, something you just want to like focus on. And that's really important to me because I find a lot of people lack focus and it kind of helps with mental health. So after that, at 1 p.m., then it's Faraz with who's going to be teaching about energy basics. It's going to be a good 40-minute seminar. I hope you do get to come, and I hope you learn a lot. About part of it is going to be the pollution that comes from different sources of energy, like oil versus greenhouse gases versus solar panels. Like they all emit a different level of carbon dioxide. And then at 2 p.m., I apologize, it's going to be me again. And I am going to be teaching and explaining how you prepare for backcountry camping and hiking. So what that really means is that when you go backcountry camping, it's not just like hiking the crack or going for a 4-hour hike or even a 1-hour hike. You're going for multiple days consecutively, and how you prepare for different hikes is going to be what I'm talking about.
I gotta admit, I'm really excited for that, Mark. I like hiking. I want to get into hiking more. And I've heard about some of the hikes that you have taken. I mean, just recently you took, what was a 3 or 4 day hike and it blows me away. I can imagine the amount of preparation that's required, not just with what you need to bring, but also that mental preparation. And realistically, with COVID-19, that's going to be one of the more popular activities this summer is hiking in backwoods, right?
Yeah, I was already helping one of our coworkers, Angela, prepare for backcountry camping because she's doing Algonquin, I think in August, and she wants to
Mhm.
do Killarney Park in sometime in September, but she's having so much difficulty booking it because it's so busy.
Well,
There's
that's a
just so
sign.
few available spots for her to book that
Mhm.
that's her hardest part right now.
That's something else, right? I mean, I think this whole situation is going to really put a spotlight on some of the great stuff we can do outdoor in our community and just around the north. And we're going to see some of that in some of the news for some of the great green groups that we got going on here. Okay, so what else do we have after that, Mark, for the on Saturday?
So on Saturday, we end it with 2 hours of games. So at 3 p.m., we're doing a backyard scavenger hunt. So I believe that'll be Dave hosting it.
Yeah,
And
I will be.
you can tell us more about what we're going to be doing for
Oh,
our
the backyard scavenger hunt is an idea to find some of the things that you don't know are in your backyard. Gardening has been a huge activity. We've seen some great gardening tutorials. We're going to talk about those later on, and where sort of they're being shared in the community. Even our own Erica of Greater Sudbury Food Policy Council has been posting videos on amateur gardening, and the Greater Sudbury Public Library with a few other folks have some great tutorials on backyard gardening that you should absolutely check out. So we're going to do a backyard scavenger hunt and explore some of the things in your backyard you don't even know you had, and stuff that's been growing there the entire time. What's great about that is that's going to be a video that you can run over and over again and use it as a tool if you want to teach someone else later a bit about backyard scavenger hunt. And actually after that, I'll lead into 4 p.m. green trivia. That's going to be a trivia game about all the nature facts that you didn't know you had, and a lot of hopefully interesting nature facts. So we're going to be talking about, some with the smell of rain, let's say, or why rainfall happens in certain ways. And we're gonna talk about things, how it connects to Greater Sudbury, because rainfall and water have to deal with soil health, and what goes in our soil goes into our lakes. So everything in that trivia is going to connect back to stuff that's happening here in Northern Ontario. You're going to learn a thing, and you're going to see how that thing affects the community. So it's going to be a great way to develop a discussion. And once again, it's going to be a little program that you can keep if you want to ever show anyone else some of the great stuff that's happening in our community, from food security to the quality of our soil, to the quality of our waterways, to our water table. There's just so much stuff that's going to be talked about, and I think this is going to be a fun piece going forward.
Yeah, like I can give you a quick fact before
Oh,
about Sudbury's like geography. 9.1% of like Greater Sudbury is wetlands.
that's a lot, man.
Yeah.
That is a lot. Do you make it out to the waterways at all? Do you hit Lake Ramsey? Do you hit up? Do you ever do a little tour of Junction Creek?
Well, I've lived downtown for almost like for most of my life. So I live near Bell Park. It's like a 10-minute walk. It's part of my regular run route, um, where I go pretty much all the way around Ramsey. Um, and my dad, like my parents separated, so I'd
Mhm.
stay with my dad sometimes, stay with my mom, the normal thing. And my dad lived like near Junction Creek, so there's a couple like trails that go along it, and we'd go walk those sometimes. And that was a really fun memory as a kid.
Yeah, I mean, just talking about the Junction Creek water table, it's one of our more prominent bodies of water and one of our most powerful ecosystems, going right through the middle of our city. And that's just a great example of a wetland that so that wetland area that can exist in harmony with rural and urban areas. Like when you're talking about city design and having sort of harmonious living with nature, Junction Creek is a great example of that. And thanks to the Junction Creek Stewardship Committee, which we'll talk about later, they are doing great work in maintaining the health of that. Mark, you were talking about stuff that you saw them pull out of Junction Creek before, right?
Yeah, well, because we lived near there and we'd walk by Junction Creek, um, I've seen some statues, not statues, some sculptures made out of the things pulled out of Junction Creek, which kind of makes me sad that they were in there in the first place, but I'm glad it's now out. Um, I don't remember the exact spots where they are, but I know they have some along Junction Creek.
That's amazing. That's something for people
Yeah.
to discover, some of that great work. Well, let's talk about the green groups then. Let's get really into it. So what we want to do is just kind of highlight some of the great stuff that the green groups are doing right now. And the green groups, when we refer to that, we're talking about some of the groups that are just doing green involved activities, sustainability activities. The Junction Creek Stewardship Committee is one of them. Next one we're going to talk about here, because we're going to dive into Junction Creek a bit more later, and that's the Coalition for a Livable Sudbury. If you haven't heard of this group, it's one to keep on your radar. Coalition for a Livable Sudbury is composed of groups, people, and passion to make grassroots changes in Greater Sudbury. Groups like many of which we're talking about today are members of Coalition for a Greater Sudbury. And they all work together with the goal of building a better community. Now, better is kind of a tough term, Mark. When you hear better community, what do you envision with that when I say someone's building a better community?
Well, there's obviously like a couple aspects to a better community. So there's like lower poverty rates. So there's the economic side of it. Then you have the social side of it where it's people get along better. There's a more cohesiveness to our society, more compassion towards everybody else. You also have the environment, which is just, it's a beautiful place to live. Sudbury is a really beautiful place to live, and I want to keep it that way.
Absolutely.
And it's
Absolutely.
made beautiful because it's not a concrete jungle. It's a town full of wildlife, but that's a good thing.
You really hit the nail on the head with that, because that's something a Coalition for Livable Sudbury strives to do. They want to create beautiful spaces, sort of blend nature and community, fill it with art and music, and make a more informed public. Active transportation is another very passionate thing about their organization, helping the city and the community have active transportation while definitely protecting sort of the environmental aspects that are woven into the city. And another thing they're very passionate about is caring for our vulnerable citizens, which definitely plays a hand in having beautiful spaces, having art and music, having natural green spaces woven into the city. So, flower beds or parks or protecting those green spaces is really important. But what they're really doing, and they're really working on right now with a lot of the green groups, is pushing the concept of net zero Sudbury. Do you know what net zero means?
Um, it's where we're emitting as much as we're sequestering from the environment. Because I, like 6-7 months ago, I read our regional community energy and emissions plan, which tackles all of that, and all of the Sudbury's plan for the CEEP. It's a pretty long document, a little technical, but it's just where as much carbon dioxide as you're emitting is as much as nature can take out of that, the same air.
You know what? That's exactly it. There's a popular misconception. Now, we're actually going to do an interview next week with a member from Coalition for Livable Sudbury. That's going to be a standalone interview, not part of the EarthFest activities that we're doing today. And I definitely encourage people to come back and take a look at it. We're going to dive into their efforts for net zero. But you're exactly right. Net zero has a popular misunderstanding. That means they think that we are not going to emit any carbon at all. And that's impossible. We emit carbon just by living day to day. And it's about reducing the amount of carbon we emit responsibly. So we are reducing the amount and then, of course, emitting what we reduce, so we essentially level out to zero. Other projects can help reduce the amount of carbon we produce. And there's that CEEP that you mentioned, the Community Energy and Emissions Plan, is a plan developed by the city with community stakeholders like Coalition, like some of the people we're talking about today, like Rethink Green. And it's filled with many steps on what the city is going to do. And Coalition wants you to read it. They want you to get involved in it. So if you're thinking, how am I going to play a part in reducing the overall carbon of Greater Sudbury, because it seems like a lot, right? Doesn't it? It seems like, how am I as an individual going to make a difference? But there's a plan there for you to look at and see, okay, well, here's some ideas. Here's what the city's trying to do. Where can I get involved? It's there for you. And these groups are helping make it happen. They just want you to be aware of it and to get involved in it. They've actually run a really great series of articles at Sudbury.com and other media throughout the city. So I think everyone should absolutely check out some of the stuff that they're doing. Another great thing they're doing, and this is something we really want to talk about, is the Pollinator Challenge. Mark, you were looking up this up earlier, right?
Yeah, so the Pollinator Challenge, which actually ends this month. Well, the
July.
challenge of it. So they want you to submit photos of your garden beds, a place where, so garden beds, flowers, those kind of spaces where pollinators can help keep the earth green. I might be misremembering it, but I think it was 3/5, like 3 out of every 5 bites of food is directly affected by pollination and pollinator plants. A cool thing I found out was that hummingbirds, they
Yes.
are pollinators.
I love hummingbirds. They're like the neatest bird next to crows. I also love crows.
I think they eat so much food, but because they go from plant to plant and with their long beak, they eat the nectar in the plants, they end up moving pollen from one plant to another, which actually really helps. Also, moths are pollinators.
Hmm. So if you see moths in your backyard, let them be. And if they try to get into your house, kick them out because they're doing their job. They're doing their job. Don't kill them. Get them out the door. And you're right. The Pollinator Challenge is trying to encourage that. Pollen, like you said, has a huge effect on our food supply. So they're promoting something called wild lawns, natural lawns, letting wildflowers grow in your lawns, and talking about the natural things that'll happen. So this is actually brought together by Coalition for Livable Sudbury with Sudbury Naturalists, Sudbury Horticultural Society, Facebook group, Sudbury Shared Harvest, and Junction Creek Stewardship Committee. So already you see these groups working together. And if you send a picture of your what's called a wild lawn to CL Sudbury at live.com by July 31st, you might win a prize for supporting pollination. You can also actually use the hashtag Pollinator Challenge or send a description and tag at Livable Sud. That's LIVABLESUD on Twitter, and that'll on Instagram or Twitter, and that'll also help show your picture and help show that you are part of a movement to help pollination. And so if you're letting some wildflowers grow in your yard, you're letting this kind of nature, you're managing it. Obviously, it's not getting too crazy. It's not getting too dangerous, but you are encouraging it. Show that picture and normalize this stuff. Be part of that movement, right? And then, you never have to mow your back lawn again. That's the other great part about it. Who wants to mow their back lawn, right?
I mean, that has a bylaw where your grass can only grow so long, but
Dang it, Mark. Why do you got to hit me with reality? Why do you got to do that to me?
I don't know. Maybe it'll change with the Pollinator Challenge if people are that.
And I think that's the idea. Guys, that's what we're going to wrap up Coalition. We're going to jump into some Junction Creek stuff. But if you want to volunteer or get involved for Coalition, you can visit them on Facebook or hit their website at livablesudbury.com. So let's talk into Junction Creek. Mark, you started talking a bit about Junction Creek. Have you ever volunteered for them before?
No, I wanted to volunteer for them last year, but I ended up working in Killarney for the whole summer, so all the volunteer opportunities, I was very far away.
Mark, I thought better of you, buddy. I thought better. How dare you have a delightful summer working in a beautiful community.
Oh, such a good place. But I'll be here this summer, so if it's open, if it's possible, if it's safe, I'll definitely be volunteering.
Did you see the thing about Turtle Road researcher?
Yeah. So
would you be tell us all about that. Would you be a Turtle Road researcher? This is an opportunity from Junction Creek.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so my girlfriend Caitlin loves turtles. So whenever we see some, she'll make sure it's off the road, make sure it's safe. She had a turtle scream at her once because she was moving it, but we actually really love turtles, and we just kind of love wildlife. We kind of go wildlife spotting sometimes. But what you can do is so I'll talk more about what it is before I end up on this tangent. So what you can do is you can email them where you see the wild turtles on the road, and with enough information gathered, they can see the hotspots where a lot of turtles are, and that is how they can figure out where to work on to put their conservation where they can work on conservation for wildlife and turtles, because they're very at risk because they're slow and they go through the road for being hit and it endangers their lives and the general cycle of their existence.
Well, that's actually very true. And obviously, we want to be very careful about these creatures. You could actually sign up for this too, can't you? If you can actually be, because they'll train you. If you don't know anything about turtles, if you're not as expertise in as Mark is about turtles, they'll actually give you a training, and you can email Citizen Science tlb@gmail.com. And they'll give you some training. You can actually sign up with a group if you have a group of friends who's passionate about turtles. Maybe you were a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan as a kid. Maybe you just really like, the design of turtles. Maybe you just wanted something to really fun to do in the community. You can be a Turtle Road researcher. Now, this is actually some really great research that helps Junction Creek. And volunteers for these community groups are such a money saving process. Now, it's hard to talk about the money of that, but let's be honest, guys, these efforts do cost money. So volunteering your time is such a powerful, powerful donation to these organizations, because giving of yourself and giving of your time, there's nothing better. There's nothing better, and you can just absolutely share your time with that. Or, of course, you can also donate money if you want. Junction Creek is currently seeking out donations. Unfortunately, all the green groups have been sort of hit with this COVID-19 scenario, and people aren't out and about in the community as much and aren't really thinking about donating to some of these causes. So if you want to go donate to Junction Creek, you can do that. They're also selling reusable bags for $10 each. You can get them from Rethink Green, or you can visit Junction Creek to get them. And they're a reusable bag you use in the summer that just helps support Junction Creek and maybe help support turtle researcher. Mark, who was your favorite Ninja Turtle?
I think I like Michelangelo the most.
Yeah, you're totally a Michelangelo dude. I feel like my generation just determined who's everyone's Ninja Turtle was. I wanted to be Donatello, but I was not smart enough. I was always like a Raphael or like a Mikey. I wanted to be Donatello, but it didn't work.
My favorite person on the team was actually Master Splinter, because he was just so zen and chill, but he was really cool and he could kick butt. And I was like, I want to be cool and tough.
Man, yeah, and you're pretty zen too. You like philosophize with me sometimes. Like, you got those zen words. So I can see you one day aging to a senior rat who will teach karate.
Yes. I don't know if that's a compliment. I guess it's a compliment in this case.
I mean, in this context, it's a compliment. I know a lot of people who breed rats. So
a fighting rat.
Yeah, that's the coolest rat you could be, realistically.
Kung Fu rat.
Yeah. Anyway, if you want to get involved in Junction Creek, visit them on Facebook or hit up junctioncreek.com to donate or to volunteer. Next one we're going to talk about is Greater Sudbury Food Policy Council. Mark, I think they have the greatest job. They get to talk about and promote food. I cannot imagine a better gig. Each week, we actually work with someone from the Greater Sudbury Food Policy Council, Erica Lagios, and I always say her last name wonky, and I apologize to Erica. You'll correct me in the next interview. But she always tells me something I didn't know about food production, food chains, and the food process, and getting food from farm to table. They exist as part of the Greater Sudbury Food Strategy and bring people together that solves many of these challenges by using what's called a dynamic and equitable food system. And it's 5 pillars of food thoughts and food practices. And the word is equitable, because food has a tremendous impact on poverty, because it's the one resource, much like, I guess, air and water, that we all need, isn't it?
Yeah, okay. This is a tangent from it a little bit. So that's actually in half an hour if you want to learn a lot more about equitable resources, equitable food, sustainable farming, regenerative farming. But I actually watched a movie called The Platform last night, and it's where a platform of food slowly descends levels, and people at the top get to eat a lot, but then when it gets to a point, there's no food left. And it's just, there's actually enough food for everybody, just nobody shares it. And that's probably one of the things we can do for equitable food. I know it's a movie. It's, I think, European or French. Well, I guess that's both.
I love your tangents, man. But that actually really highlights an issue. Talk about a metaphor for how food exists. There is technically enough food for everybody, but by the time the food chain does get to people, there may not necessarily be enough food to get to everybody. That is actually a really neat concept. And they're solving problems like that. You know, we should ask Erica if she's ever seen a giant food platform.
I'm going to recommend that you don't watch it with your kids because it is a little gruesome how violent it gets for survival.
Okay, all right. Well, maybe we won't ask Erica about the platform.
Yeah,
well,
it's a really neat allegory for how resources get distributed.
Well, speaking of that, actually, speaking of resources, the Greater Sudbury Food Policy Council has been a huge player in the Farm to Table Facebook group that was independently created by local farmers. And they've been assisting with some of the passionate people in local farms and the community in getting food directly to the community. If you're not part of this Farm to Table Facebook group, you definitely need to join because it is starting the trend of digital resources helping you get farm food directly to you. And there's great players involved, great farmers involved, great community members involved, and it really is just helping keep money and resources in Northern Ontario. It's buying local and sending food local, and I don't think there's any food platforms. I don't know. I haven't been to every farm, but I mean, the day's young. We'll see how that goes.
I know you can only grow so many crops in a year. It may still be first come, first serve.
True. It's true. Things can get crazy. Yeah, get to it before it becomes a survival movie.
It will still be the same price across. At least I imagine, no matter what. We'll try and be equitable and fair on prices. And I think it's really important to support good agricultural practices that don't use pesticides or insecticides, because those are actually really big for killing pollinators.
Look at this, everything cycles back. Another really cool thing that Greater Sudbury Food Policy Council, some news from them, they've recently partnered with Collège Boreal to discover how COVID-19 has been affecting the farming and agricultural sector. This is going to be a study with Collège Boreal to talk about, to figure out how these sort of pandemic scenarios, this specific pandemic scenario, has affected farming. Now, we are very fortunate that here in the north, we have a great community that sought food out from farmers, but resources are limited. Traffic is limited. Everyone's looking for that same bit of coverage. So I'm really excited to see what comes of this study and also to find out the best practices about that. And as well, sort of the Greater Sudbury Food Policy Council is a huge advocate for community gardens, and community gardens are public spaces in which you actively participate in the garden and can take food from the garden, and that helps about food security. I'm going to let Erica talk about that later today. You do not want to miss it. That's going to start at around 1 o'clock, or 12 o'clock, sorry, and you definitely want to take part of that. But if you want to get more information before then, visit Facebook for Greater Sudbury Food Policy Council or visit them at their website, sudburyfoodpolicy.com. The next green group is also a food one, Sudbury Shared Harvest. You ever heard of these guys, Mark?
No, I read about them. I remember reading about it's the Delky Dozy where they have like an 8,000 square foot farm around it. It's not really like a farm, it's more of like a community garden where they set up, I think it was 2016. So that was like phase one of starting it and getting it going, and it will take care of itself. It doesn't really require much more for manpower. They will still take volunteers for maintenance and stuff. And phase two in 2018, I believe that's when that started. They are starting to try and get that in other parks and other green areas to help with food equity.
Yeah, man, you did your research well. Sudbury Shared Harvest is one of those unsung heroes of the community. They are working, they're an organization that connects food and the people and the land it comes from through education and community involvement. They are the ones who've been doing gardening education sessions with the Greater Sudbury Public Library, which you can actually find still on the Greater Sudbury Public Library Facebook page. And they are fantastic tutorials on how to start community gardening. And they also have, they also got a video on sort of like maintaining trees, what kind of fruit trees to do, how to do with your soil. It's super great. And that Delky Dozy project out by Delky Dozy Park is called the Food Forest. And that was made possible with Rethink Green, Trillium Foundation, TD Friends of the Environment Foundation. And everything there is edible. Like, how cool is that? It's called an edible food forest. And this project means you can eat anything. You can eat everything that grows out of the soil, like every part of it, except for the soil. Please do not do that. That is the worst. So don't do that. But how cool is that, right? Like, I think that's really neat to have that right in the middle of your community.
Like, I even know that's a pretty popular like walking spot for people, so they can still kind of get out in the woods, not crazy deep into it. But could you imagine, like, it's kind of like when you're going for a walk or when you're hiking and you find a little blueberry patch and take a snack and go. Basically that, but almost everywhere in your community. At least come into almost every district.
Let's get more of these food forests in our community. Like this is what they've done is they've proven it works. And these community gardens that have existed around the community are building on that. And are doing their own projects for community gardens. But understand, like, this premise works, and it is possible to be involved in that. So much so, there's another really cool project that they just did, and it was Cultivate Your Neighborhood program, and it was a soil project in which they gave out soil to create over 500 community gardens or backyard gardens for food equity. So they gave soil and resources to community members all over Greater Sudbury during the provincial state of emergency to help contribute with community wellness. This is part of a state of emergency process, but they were the ones to really spearhead this here in Sudbury. And this was the idea that for people who have little to nothing, or people who have more than that too, anyone who's suffering from mental health and needs some more physical well-being, they can create a garden. And increases food security by engaging the neighborhood and yard gardening. So it can provide fresh local food to residents, increase gardening interests and skills in gardening, as diverse as vulnerable populations and newly economically challenged populations, because COVID hit all of us hard. You know what I mean? So growing sustainable food that you can rely on later in the summer is a great way to be involved with your food. And it's also ensured that you have food later on down the line. Now, unfortunately, this project is closed. Sorry, it's 300 home gardens, not 500 home gardens. But this was part of the Sudbury Community Garden Network, Sudbury Shared Harvest, Sudbury Food Bank, with the Greater Sudbury Food Policy Council and local businesses, obviously Greater Sudbury and Greater Sudbury Housing Corporation. So a lot of people came together to do this. But just be aware of this project, because this is super friggin' cool. These are the kind of resources we can give to our community and make an immediate impact while educating them. This is so amazing. I hope we see more of this.
I don't know about you, Dave, but I know since COVID started, the pandemic was in full swing, I definitely have been eating more. Spending more money on food, so I would be one to benefit.
Yeah, man, I'm sure you can see from this camera that adds 10 pounds that I've definitely been eating more.
I think a lot of people have. We just get
it's been fun. But you know what? And that's the thing, right? We have that ability. I've been snacking more. I've been eating more. And we have the freedom to do that. Let's talk about that, because we have that privilege that we can do that. We have the agency to do that. So we can joke about it, but there's a lot of people who didn't have that ability, who didn't gain a COVID 10 pounds. They lost a COVID 10 pounds because they didn't have access to these food materials and food resources. So that's why this program is so important, because there's two sides of this pandemic. The side that like us, who got to joke about it a bit, and those who are drastically affected. And I think it's the responsibility of one side to support the other, and this is exactly that.
Yeah, it's the responsibility of the haves to help the do-nots.
Exactly. So let's talk about something that's come back since COVID, and that's Bike Sudbury. If you want to, if you want to get involved in the Sudbury Shared Harvest, definitely hit them up on Facebook, and there's a lot of resources there to help you get involved. They're actually really super cool. Okay, so Bike Sudbury. Bike Sudbury is an organization, and you've seen them around on their regular evening rides. Bike Sudbury started in 2010 and is the Sudbury Cyclists Union in 2010, but they changed their name to Bike Sudbury in what I thought was a stroke of marketing genius. It describes what they do and what they want you to do, and that's bike. And they recently brought back one of the most popular programs, which is the community ride. Have you ever taken part of the community ride before, Mark? Have you ever done any of that stuff?
I haven't done the community ride, but I really do like biking. Like, I don't like driving. I don't want to drive, so I'll try and jog or bike places.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's scary on the road, so I'll take the sidewalk. And I know I'm not supposed to, but I feel safer there. And I know that's part of like Sudbury has like an infrastructure plan for that, but that was kind of pushed by Bike Sudbury, right?
Well, actually, that's a really good point you brought up. Let's talk about the cycling infrastructure project. Now, Bike Sudbury is such an important part of that because it normalizes cycling in the community. You can see people cycling on rides, and the Sudbury Cycling Infrastructure Project came out in 2016 as part of the Transportation Master Plan, and what it did was it updated a network of cycling routes in the community that stretches from one side of the city to the other. And you could take a look and go on greatersudbury.com to see the plan, but it builds cycling infrastructure so you can safely cycle on the road. But our drivers need to get used to that. This is part of that active transportation concept. The more cycling we see in the community, the more normalized we are here in Greater Sudbury. And a lot of people think that Sudbury isn't bikeable, and that's just not true. The Sudbury Bike Sudbury has been doing community rides starting on Thursday nights, obviously safely through COVID-19. Reach out to them, go to them on Facebook, and book your time, because what they're doing is they're booking start times so you can cycle distance from each other to do the route. But they're going, yesterday they just went through the Donovan and Flour Mill. They go through downtown. They go through the South End. So it's all over the community to show how bikeable it is. Where do you go biking, Mark?
Well, at the moment, I'm in I'm in Valcarin, so we tend to just take like a 4-kilometer bike to the beach, go swimming, come back, or we'll do.
That's a great point. That's a great point. So you got a bike trail, you go to the beach?
It's on the road, but it's not the most popular road, so I feel fine taking it, and I feel like community is really friendly. So there's like, everybody here. So if people are like jerks, you go to their house that you're like, hey man, you almost hit me. But I went jogging with my nephew. We went by like Bell Park. He biked, had to push him up the hills. But I bike downtown Sudbury a decent amount. I think one of my favorite stretches is on Bancroft because they have a bike path, and I'll go to Moonlight that way.
Oh, and Moonlight, great beach, great community beach. Absolutely.
You bike, Dave?
Absolutely. Yeah, here's the pot calling the kettle lazy. No, I don't. I don't bike, and it's not. I walk a lot though. Actually, I walk a phenomenal amount, and I will actively use Greater Sudbury Transit because I think a healthy transit system is very important, and I think we should normalize using transit as well. So it's not just for a certain demographic of people. People think that only kids and the elderly use it. No, it is everybody should be using it. So that's a different topic altogether, but I walk a lot. I do want to get into cycling a lot more though. And I think that's like my this year to do, but I love going for a good walk. Give me a couple hours and a bottle of water and I'm good to go. I love it. I love it. I love it.
I'm going to recommend getting the shorts that have the padded butt, so it just doesn't hurt as much on your first couple of days, getting used to it. We're going really far, really long.
I appreciate that. Join us for next month's Echo Earth News Hour, where Mark gives us cycling tips on cycling shorts. But if you do want to know more about the community ride, get us hit Bike Sudbury on Facebook, and you'll be able to join in on a Thursday night. We want to wrap things up because 12 o'clock we got Erica talking about food security, and I'm really excited for that interview to talk about what food security is conceptually and what we can do about it. But let's talk about something that Citizens Climate Lobby has been doing And that's Fridays for Future. Actually, at 12 o'clock at Tom Davies Square, they're doing a shoeless dance. So you can actually go do that today. It's called the Shoe Strike and Bollywood Dancing, and it's celebrating the end of the school year. Fridays for Future has been a striking event that's been going all across the world. And we have such a strong team here in Sudbury, and they take one Friday a month off from school, and they make a community showing to show how the youth want to care. How the youth doesn't that make me sound old? How the youth,
The young whippersnappers.
young, and can I say fellow youth, and I'd be lying? Is that when it's too old to call yourself youth? And they thank you, Mark. That's why I hang out with you, man. I think it makes you look older by association. But anyway, these guys are doing great work down at Tom Davies Square today, celebrating and showing that they care about climate change, and they have been doing this so actively. So you guys, if you want to go check that out, you can also, if you want, take part in an online viewing. There's going to be some a convocation. There's also going to be a dance from MP Mark Sari and MPP Jamie West. You don't want to miss that too. So that's also online at 12 if you want to take a look at that. Once again, that's Climate Change. So Citizens Climate Lobby, Fridays for Future Sudbury. So check that out on Facebook for more details. And that's really going to be a really fun event. But I think we got to wrap this up, Mark, because we got to get ready for our next interview, I think.
Yeah, this is a good 3/4 hour newscast.
Exactly.
And
I am David St. George, and if you want to see more stuff like this, let us know at info@rethinkgreen.ca or